Alright, so this is going to be a tutorial for the God Cycle in the Native Fortress any percent speedrun. It's actually in every category, in all gems and 105% on your first visit you can do this. And the split should end up being about 2 minutes and 1 second if you do it all correctly. So this is just going to be like a bunch of tips and shit to make it way easier. It's just going to be like super quick, super descriptive, and pretty messy to be honest. But yeah, whatever, let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do every single time you load into the level is spin these. Every single time you want to load into the level, because doing that gets rid of floaties. I'm not going to bother explaining what those are. That's a completely separate thing. But just trust me, just spin those every time. It takes like a picosecond. Just spin them, get rid of the floaties, and just be on your way. Alright, so the next thing I want to introduce is the concept of shortening your jump. So your jumps at first might look like this. Like, as you know, you're supposed to be holding X or the jump button, whatever it may be, to get higher off the crates. However, it loses quite a lot of time to do that the full way, like that. You want to just shorten your jumps by letting go of X towards the end of one of your bounces, like this. And you'll see that I end up on that second bouncy crate way, way faster. So that's a concept that can take a lot of time to practice, because you can end up doing this a lot of the time and just like running into it and not actually bouncing on top of it. And obviously you come back down here and you lose a lot of time when you do that. So it's better to just shorten them by a little bit, not to go like super duper duper correct on them like that, because then you risk the chance of just not getting it at all and just like falling behind the crate like this. So this is something that you need to practice a lot, because it is probably where you're losing the most time if you aren't making the God Cycle right now. I can almost guarantee it. It's just shortening your jumps. It makes a huge difference, way bigger than you'd expect. So after you've shortened your jumps on the way up here, there are a few ways of getting this turtle. I would suggest learning the turtle snipe, because it is consistent as long as you are. You could just jump on it like that and just be on your way, but it is slightly slower and it is a lot easier to make the God Cycle if you do learn the turtle snipe, so I'm just going to briefly introduce how to do that. Alright, so after loading into the level, spinning these crates and shortening your jumps up here, you just want to do a long jump and spin the turtle. Reason being is you want to be on the left side of it while it's on the left side in order to hit it. So you see how I sort of ended up halfway between its back and its tail while I was spinning it, and while it was on the left side of the crate as well. That's because you're supposed to spin it on whatever side it is to the crate. For example, if I wait up here for it to go to the right side and then I spin it on its right side, while it is on the right side of the crate, then you will get the mask. And so every time that you load into the level, it will be on the left side of the crate. You just have to get up there fast enough, do a long jump to its other side, spin, and then you get the snipe every time. I highly suggest practicing this and just getting consistent at it. Once you find consistency in it, then it should be completely fine. You should be able to do it every single time. However, if you find that you aren't getting it and you cannot put your finger on why, you swear for the love of God that you are making it every single time, that you should be making it every single time, the reason is probably because you have the random floaties glitch. If you have the random floaties glitch, then you cannot make the turtle snipe consistently. I don't understand the correlation, nobody does, but if you do have that glitch, unfortunately, you just can't make the turtle snipe consistently, and I have nothing else to say about that.
Hi, clutching from like 15 months in the future here. We now have a fix for the random floaty glitch. It's pinned in the tech support channel in the Crash HD speedrunning Discord server, so feel free to join that. The link will be in the description. It's too much to explain here, so just check that pinned message in that channel down below. This only works for people with NVIDIA capture cards though. If you have an AMD capture card, then you're shit out of luck. No idea how to fix it. But maybe there's some like setting that's similar to the one that we changed for the NVIDIA fix. I don't know. You should still check it out. Maybe you can find something.
So the next important thing to mention is the concept of jump patterns. As you'll see right now, I'm jumping in a certain way. I'm doing like 2 short jumps, then 1 long jump. And the reason I do this is because I jump in the same way every single time. Every single time. If you watch all my VODs, then you'll see that I do this the same way every time, because it creates consistently. If you don't know, then Crash is, unless he's bouncing, Crash is faster in the air than when he's on the ground. So you just want to be jumping all the time. However, if you're not doing it consistently, then you can just jump and you can think that you're going to make a jump, but then you end up falling in a pit or something. So you need to just practice jumping the same way every single time. Like I suggest loading out of the level, loading in, and then just practicing the start bit right here up to here every single time, the exact same way, so that you develop consistently. You should do that for every single section, for absolutely every single section on the map. Just try to develop a jump pattern that works for you, that is quite optimal, and just keep it that way and do it that way every time. And if you just practice the sections individually, then you will develop a muscle memory for it. Next, I want to introduce getting past this first spike. Getting past this first spike sucks for a lot of people, but if you just do it the same way every single time consistently, then you will get it every time.
So you want to make your way all the way down to the bottom of this moss, and then however you jump up this, buffer all your jumps. I do 3 long jumps though.
I got hit by the flame there, but regardless. You are going to have to load out of level and load back in if you want to practice this, unfortunately, because once you've reached a certain point, that cycle is triggered, and it will remain triggered for the duration of the time you're playing the level until you load out and load back in again. After that, you just want to jump this flame, you just want to do a bunch of jumps until you get to this point. And then this climb is really important. You want to take the concept of shortening your jumps and you want to apply it to the log climb as well as the bouncy pad climb. You want to apply it here as well. So what you want to do is you want to come here, you want to do a short jump there and then chain it into a jump over here, and see how I like sort of just instantly land here. I don't do a full jump, because if you do a full jump, you're in the air for longer than you have to. Oh, if you're doing a full jump, you're in the air for longer than you have to be. So you want to shorten your jumps here as well. And a little tip as well is you want to like sort of, as you're coming in, you want to go up as well so that you're facing this wall, because this is like a diagonal ledge right here. So you can land earlier as long as you're like closer to the wall, because if you see me going backwards and forwards right now, I am falling off the ledge because I'm not against the wall. So this climb is something that you want to just practice, drop back down, wait for the logs to reset, and then practice again. And you just want to do that until you're fast at it. And then you want to chain that into shortening your jumps here and making your way up. And then you just want to keep developing your jump pattern up here, just the same thing really. You want to spend as much time on this moss as possible, obviously. Try not to jump off of this, like with a short jump, because then you end up on the ground for a little bit, and you want to just keep that speed of being in the air until you touch the next bit of the moss. So that's just a quick tip. And just keep doing everything as per normal, and then this prick comes into play. Everybody struggles with this guy, and it's for a damn good reason. He's so annoying. But a good tip with the tribesman is just to land on the front of their shield, like the top front of their shield, and they will just proc down every single time very consistently. If you land on their head, then chances are you're going to be running on his head for a little bit, and it's going to be super awkward, like that, right there. And it just gets really hard to react to it when you're in a speed run. So just try to aim for the top of his shield every time. I also suggest practicing this a lot. However, you do usually want to spin, because there is a crate that I just broke up here. And you want to spin that, so you want to sort of spin that crate and still aim to land on top of his shield, and then spin him after you're done with him. You should end up on the other side of him, and then, yeah, you'll spin him away, and you'll just carry on. Now, this is a good time to talk about this spike up here. This is the only time you should be getting stuck. If you're getting stuck at the flames or at the spikes behind this section, then you are going too slow and you need to shorten your jumps more, or you need to develop a better jump pattern. You need to just take the tips that I just mentioned and you need to apply them. You need to practice them and work on them, because this should be the first point where you get stuck. This spike, it triggers as soon as you load into the map every time, and you should be waiting here for like maybe about half a second to a second if you're being optimal enough. I'll provide an example while I talk about it. So there are 2 points where you want to be stuck, and that spike is one of them. The second one is the first 3 flames on the top floor of the level, which are basically just the God Cycle flames. So you see, I've made it here on good pace. Sorry, this is how I'm treating the tribesman, and then I have to wait for that spike to come down before I proceed. It is actually possible to make it past this spike before it props down at that point. Like, that's how much time you actually have to save here. You can make it past the spike a whole cycle earlier. However, doing so is completely useless. It just ends up with this spike up here impaling you, and you just end up catching the same cycle. But I don't really have any tips for these sections. Just sort of develop your jump pattern again. Just make sure you're jumping the same way every single time. It may be beneficial to load out and load back into the map so that you're still versing the same enemies and you have the same crates in your way every single time. Otherwise, you might get used to not having these things in your way, and you will not be playing the same in the speedrun. It's very common to be forced to wait on this flame here, like I just did. That's because you're going too slowly. Again, you need to try to apply the tips that I just mentioned. You should not be getting stuck on that flame if you are trying to make the God Cycle. It is very common though, and it probably will take a lot of practice before you're able to get past that flame. And now this is where jump patterns, I would argue, are the most important in the game. You want to sort of do a long jump here, do a bunch of short jumps, and then do a long jump onto here. And then, or at least that's what I do. You can do it however you want, as long as you're making it the same way every single time. And then the tribesman always comes at me the same way. Because I'm not varying my jump patterns, I know exactly how the tribesman is going to come at me and how I can approach him every single time. If I were to just do it completely randomly, it does become a lot more difficult to deal with the tribesman. There are also tribesman hops as well, which I'm only going to briefly talk over because they're definitely not necessary for the God Cycle at all. But basically, you just do the same thing every single time, except you land on his head. And if you land on his head instead of on the top of his shield, you know how I was talking about that jank earlier, where if you land on the top of his head, you sort of start to walk for a little bit? Well, during this walk, you can actually jump, and if you jump, he can follow you, and if he follows you, then you can jump on his head again, and you don't even have to deal with him. You just jump on top of his head, and you just keep going. It's sort of necessary for Master Plus God Cycle. Not really, but it kind of is. And it just makes it way fucking faster, but it's definitely not necessary at all, and I don't think you should be learning it until you're going for Master Plus God Cycle. The only tip I have for this damage abuse right here is to just sort of spin it on your way down. So that you spin the crate that's above the TNT before you spin the TNT. Otherwise, you can get a little bit stuck, and it can be really annoying. But it really shouldn't be that big a deal. You should be able to just fly through that as long as you just practice it. Again, do the same thing every time. Consistency really is key. I cannot overstate that enough.
So this is what this section looks like normally in a full run. Just figured in hindsight I should probably show that.
Let's say that you get messed up though, and you lose your mask here. Well, I haven't actually triggered these spike cycles yet because they trigger as soon as you leave that flame. So me doing that this way is going to be the same way for you guys in runs. What you want to do is you want to get to the moss on the other side, do 2 short jumps, and then you can just blitz it straight forward. And you are not going to be able to catch the God Cycle like this. It might be possible barely, but it's really unlikely. Just go for second cycle at that point. But as an emergency strat, you want to spin the crate that's above your TNT on your way down from your jump off of the moss. And then you want to do a full jump and spin a crate. And then you want to do a full jump and you'll be able to spin 2 crates as long as you do it how I'm going to do it. Oops. And see how much time I had there? You should be able to do it the same way every time. Based on how the crates bounce when you spin the crate that's above the TNT, because they bounce on their way down, sometimes you might get the double hit the second time you spin. Sometimes you might get it the first time. It doesn't really matter as long as you just, on your 3rd jump, make it over and then just jump past the spike. That's a nice little emergency strat right there. It still loses like 5 seconds to the God Cycle, but I mean, it's worth it. Even I'm still doing that emergency strat and runs and just taking the L on the way out. It's literally fine. So just like this. And it might feel a little bit jank, but you do get used to it eventually. It is definitely worth it to practice this in case that this does happen in runs. I'll just jump patterns again, and for this section, you just want to do the same thing that you did on the previous sections, well, the previous climb rather. And that's just to shorten your jumps as much as possible and utilize your movement. I tried to be greedy there. I still do that in runs all the time. I try to be too greedy, shorten my jumps too much, and then I just end up missing the God Cycle because I fall all the way back down. So again, to reiterate, hug the wall, and then just shorten your jumps on the way up. Spinning the logs themselves, I forgot to mention, that can actually be a little bit tough for newbies. Except for this first one, because you should be spinning it on your way. But you just want to like sort of do a full jump, but shorten it, and then land on the left side, and you should have enough height to hit the log that's above you, and also to just proceed, obviously. So that's where I'm landing right there. If I were to spin, then I would have hit that, and I would be able to proceed. If you land on the right side, then chances are you're not going to be able to hit it, you're not going to be close enough, and you're going to be a little too fast anyway, because if you're a little too fast here, then you can actually phase through the log. So you need to time it so that you land on the log at the perfect time, because the log doesn't actually have a landable hitbox until it's still, for example. See that right there, how I went through it? That's because I spun it on my way up here, and I didn't do it earlier like I should have. Again, just like that. So you want to develop a consistency with that as well. Just copy how I do it, basically. So something else that you want to watch out for here is fat fingering. So fat fingering is sort of just a concept where you'll hit up or down on the D-pad when you're doing this climb when you're not supposed to, and it makes Crash go diagonal, and when he goes diagonal he loses movement speed and you're just going to do this slower and you might even end up missing jumps, etc. So just try not to fat finger, try to make sure that you're only hitting left and right on the D-pad, because if you fat finger, like right there I was going diagonally instead of just straight left and that was just way slower. I'll do diagonals here as well, and like it's pretty obvious how much slower it is, to be honest. So you just want to do that climb just by shortening your jumps, just like I did there. Plain and simple. And for getting behind the map, you just want to just go diagonally, just plain and simple. Just hop up diagonally and then exit diagonally. Just plain and simple, that's the fastest way of doing it. It might be like slightly faster to move up a little bit, but not really. It's definitely not significant if it is. I've never noticed it. So just do diags up here and you're fine. Same with exiting it as well on the other side. Now, visual cues usually aren't important, provided that you're just, you know, on decent pace. However, here, it can be really notable. So if you land before the flames actually fully ignited on the other side behind the map, then you are going to be able to make the God Cycle. I didn't there, so I'm going to be a little slow. I'm going to barely miss it. Watch. I'm going to get damaged by this final flame. Because I used it as a visual cue earlier. Because the flames are consistent. They are map cycles. They start from the moment you load into the map. So I know every single time whether or not I'm going to be able to make it. Sometimes it's really, really close and I'm not exactly sure, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to tell when you just practice that section coming behind here and just doing this consistently the same way every single time, using this as a visual cue, using this flame as a visual cue, you will know when you're going to make it and when you're not. For example, right here, I know that I'm going to make it because I landed before the flame fully ignited. I'm chaining my jumps here as per normal. And you can bounce at the end of this flame. There is no reason not to bounce at the end of this flame. Please bounce at the end of this flame because it's safer and it's just as fast because you still have to make it past this spike at the same time every time anyway.
Furthermore, it's really important that when you do bounce on this flame, you bounce on the right side of it and you only tap the bounce button. You don't need to do any more than just tapping the jump button to extend your bounce. Anything more than that, and you're just gonna spend too much time in the air in a bounce and it's slow. Don't do that. Just tap the bounce button, please, or the jump button, whatever. Just don't hold it.
Getting past these 3 flames in a row is extremely important. You will just straight up catch second cycle and lose 5 seconds if you do not make it past these 3 flames in a row. So you need to just learn when you can actually jump on the flames. Like right here, I'm gonna die because I jumped in slightly too early. However, while the flames are still visual on screen, you can still jump on them sometimes. Like right there. You just need to practice that, get consistent at it. As long as you're like just not being insanely risky and you just know about when to go, if you just do this and then you just do a long jump on here, you are going to make it every time. You're going to be fine. Again, I cannot overemphasize how important it is to just be consistent and to just practice this section. Like right here, I'm jumping on the flame pretty late compared to normal and I still make it every time. It is really safe as long as you just, you know when you're supposed to jump. And again, to reiterate, these are pretty much the God Cycle flames because once you've made it past these 3 flames in a row, you pretty much just hold left and it's going to be free for the rest of the way. I'll provide an example now. So as you can see, I'm doing a long bounce here and then I'm just keeping on holding left. And these are going to line up every single time. Sometimes you might have to wait before the flame that I just jumped on a little bit, but for the most part, you will be fine. And then here, you'll be fine as well. However, that's only if you barely make those first 3 flames on the top floor. If you make them with quite a bit of leeway, then you are going to have to wait at this bit here, and you're going to have to time it. Timing this bit honestly sucks. I still fuck it up quite occasionally. Because you have to make it through all 4 of these flames, and doing it without a bounce on the final one is next to fucking impossible. I've done it like 1 or 2 times in runs. So you just want to wait here, and you just want to practice it over and over and over again. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. I'm sorry that I can't give you any better tips than that. But as long as you just practice these flames over and over and over again, you will get them. I can, however, suggest that you that you jump on the right side of this flame here, because if you jump on the left side, you're giving yourself more time to be hit by the flame, and it's just safer to jump on the right side of it. If you want, then you can always just sit up here and wait if you don't think you're going to make the cycle, and that loses like 1 or 2 seconds. It's not a huge deal at all. And then this climb is essentially just the same as the rest. It's just shortening your jumps, hugging the wall, etc. And then you've done it. You've won. Easy. So now I'm going to go through a full run with commentary to just, again, go over everything that we've just talked about. So this here is an example of mask plus guard cycle. So basically it's an extremely optimized split. It's so optimized so that I go for the mask on the climb instead of just keeping on going, which would lose 5 seconds if I didn't make the same cycle, but because I did it, I can damage abuse later in the run and save 2 seconds. So I don't suggest you go for the mask. I'm just using this run because it shows a lot of the elements of what you're supposed to do, such as shortening your jumps, jump patterns, how to deal with the tribesmen, etc. And that's why I'm using it as an exemplar. I do not suggest you go for the mask unless you are making second cycle like by quite a lot and not quite making guard cycle just yet. That's the only time I would generally suggest that you go for the mask. So right here, killing all those 4 crates, you only want to do that if you actually know how to optimize the section, because otherwise the turtle will be too far to the right and you're going to miss it. Anyways, so far, so good. Jump pattern's consistent. This is how I play that section. You don't have to play it the same way. You just have to play it a way that's consistent for you as long as you make it past the spike. Getting that crate is another greedy thing that you can do if you're fast enough. Again, this is just an exemplar of how to be as fast as possible. Grabbing that crate saves it from bonking on you at the end, and you do still save as much time. So again, even though I grabbed all those extra crates, I do still have to wait at the spike here. So you should be waiting at that spike. Again, just optimizing the climb. If you look closely, you can see that I fat finger a little bit there, but thankfully it didn't matter too much. And you see that the flame didn't ignite until I was actually landed. That's how I know that I'm going to be able to clear this guard cycle. See how I jump at the edge and I still do a bounce? That's how I know that I'm going to be able to clear this super, super well. Because I did it a little bit slowly, and so I don't have to wait at the end here. In fact, I'm doing it so well that I don't even go for a high bounce. I just go for a short bounce there, and that saves a little bit of time, but again, it's definitely not necessary. It's just like super optimized stuff. And yeah. So just really quickly before I end, I'm going to go over, just summarize, go over some parts that I think I glossed over a little bit. So these last 4 flames right here, this right here is a good example of being slightly too late, ever so slightly. So you'll see that Crash lands as the flames are disappearing. If you are not landing while the flames are still sort of like coming out in full bursts, but you aren't taking damage, then you are not going to be able to make this. You are going to have to wait at the wall, which is not a huge deal again. And the second tribesman, I feel like I glossed over how to deal with him a little too much because I tend to just do the hops, but you don't really want to do those. So again, I do that every single time. I do that jump pattern the same way every single time. I land the same way every single time, so I know he's going to come at me the same way every single time.
But what's really important is that you land in the same spot every single time, and it should be about here, with Crash's feet being like halfway between that first wooden block and the second wooden block. If you land too early, then the tribesman does some funny stuff if you go for tribesman hops.
So I know that I can chain a shortened full jump. So you don't want to do a short jump. You don't want to just tap X. You don't want to hold jump the entire time. It's like when you're climbing. You want to shorten it a little bit, just so that you're aiming to land on the top of his shield as I did then, and then he'll just instantly snap again. You just want to practice jump patterns. I cannot overestimate the importance. And then you will land on the other side of him, and you should spin as soon as you can. Because, I mean, there is a chance that you can also just land and bounce again, but it is pretty unlikely that you'll do that. But just spin as soon as you can, just keep going right, and you'll be fine. If you round on his head a little bit, then you are probably going to end up jumping and falling in the pit below. So you do need to learn how to land on the top of his shield. So yeah, that should be about everything. My Discord should be in the description, and also you can contact me in the comment section if you do have any questions. You can send me any examples of you doing it, and you can be like, hey, why the hell am I not making this? Or you can send them to the Crash Speedrunning Discord. A link for that will be in the description as well. And someone in there could help you out. If not me, then yeah, you should be able to get this down. Honestly, once you learn all the tips and techniques, it doesn't become free. It's very difficult, but it becomes a lot easier once you understand the concepts and what exactly to do and when and where. So yeah, that's all from me.